Vikings were amongst some of the first settlers on the Orkney Islands.
Saw those, the shipwrecks and stuff. I'm like, now I have the hook to get these guys to come with me to Scotland.
One thing that is perhaps unusual about Scapa, with it being an island distillery, is that it does produce an unpeated style of single malt. Tasting experience and also the chance for you to pull a dram of Scapa from the cask as well.
When I'm going to get to Orkney, I'm going to have to stay on the island, right? So probably won't have to walk too far after doing that warehouse tasting. So that's Hey everyone, welcome back to the Discover series with the Whisky Advisor. I'm Uday Balaji. So today we're off to one of the most northernmost parts of Scotland, the Orkney Islands, and we're going to be discovering all things Scapa with brand ambassador Jordan Edwards. Hey Jordan, how are you? It's been quite a while.
Hey Uday, it's great to see you again. Yeah, it has been a little while, but doing very well, thank you.
Great to have you back. Guys, for those of you who don't know, the first episode in the Discover series was the Glenlivet with Jordan, nearly 6 months ago. Time flies, yeah.
An incredible amount of time. I can't believe that was so long ago already.
Yeah. But what do you have in your glass today?
So today I have a glass of the sumptuous Scapa Skirin single malt. So I'll just grab that so you can see it there. Scapa Skirin from First Fill American oak casks.
I've got the Glancer myself.
And yeah, the Glancer, superb whiskey as well, with a slight smoky flavour to it. So yeah, I've got the beautiful floral and fruity Scapa Skirin. So I'm going to enjoy having this through the session.
Wonderful. Slanja.
Slanja.
So guys, just before we jump into Orkney and Scapa, I'd like to, as always, ask you to please like, subscribe, and hit the little bell so you'll know every time we have a new video on here. But, as I mentioned, Scapa is from one of the most northern parts of Scotland, possibly, one of the most northern whiskey distilleries in the world, all the way up in the Orkney Islands. Could you tell us a little bit about the Orkney Islands themselves before we jump into Scapa, Jordan?
Of course, Uday. The Orkney Islands they're really quite a special place. As you say, one of the most northern parts of Scotland, just off the north coast of the mainland. A group of islands that are relatively unexplored. They're a bit mysterious, I think, and they're also home to some of the more extreme weather conditions and also some of the most beautiful scenery that you can find across Scotland as well. Especially in the summer, you have those long summer evenings when darkness only comes very, very late in the evening. But yeah, a beautiful, unexplored, mysterious place, of course, with great whiskey heritage as well, with Scapa dating way back to the 19th century. So yeah, the rugged shores of the Orkney Islands are certainly becoming a more popular tourist hotspot, I would say. But still relatively unexplored, although with a very rich history as well. The Vikings were amongst some of the first settlers on the Orkney Islands, so there's great Viking heritage on Orkney as well, which also relates to Scapa as well, which I'll talk about a little later on. So really, really special place, and it's a must visit if you're in Scotland.
Oh, I definitely plan to visit because one of my dream trips is doing the NC 500 all the way up and, visiting Orkney and all this. And definitely the next time that I'm in Scotland. But could you tell us a little more about the history of Scapa, the brand itself, George?
Yeah, of course. So Scapa, the Scapa single malt Scotch whisky distillery was established in 1885 by two gentlemen by the name of Macfarlane and Townsend. So towards the tail end of the 19th century, but as you know, many of the Scotch whisky distilleries that are still active and very prominent today, that was an important era where most of them were founded. So Scapa, being a relatively small distillery still to this day, but the producer of a fantastic single malt that is very much a beloved single malt of whiskey connoisseurs. In fact, in 1887, this a long time ago, you know, just a couple of years after Scapa was first built and founded, a man by the name of Alfred Barnard, you might have heard of him, a very famous brewing and distilling historian. He took it upon himself to visit all of the whisky distilleries located across the British Isles and Ireland to gain a knowledge of them all. And he visited Scapa in 1887 and described it as one of the most beautiful little distilleries in the country. So it's still really carried that reputation to this present day. The distillery itself sitting facing opposite Scapa Flow, as well, a very, very famous bed of water, which with huge historical significance as well, particularly during the First and Second World War. But yeah, Scapa Distillery, quite an artisan single malt, producing just a little over 1 million litres per year, but some very, very special whiskies coming from there as well. And I think one thing that is perhaps unusual about Scapa, with it being an island distillery, is that it does produce an unpeated style of single malt as well. So quite unique in that sense.
Great. I'd love to talk more about that when we get to the range. But you know, you mentioned Scapa Flow as well. So most of my friends are into diving, not so much into whiskey. So the moment I did my research on Scapa Flow and saw those, you know, the shipwrecks and stuff, I'm like, now I have the hook to get these guys to come with me to Scotland. So that's one right there. And talking about visiting. So recently I was on maltwhiskydistilleries.com, where you have a whole bunch of different distillery experiences, right? I'd just love to know a little more about, you know, must-dos at the Scapa Distillery itself, and anything else you'd like to share about that website.
Yep, so the maltwhiskydistilleries.com will give you a very thorough insight into particularly the tour options that Scapa Distillery will offer you, as well as, of course, the whiskies and a little facts about the distillery itself. So there's primarily three different tour options that you can take at the Scapa Distillery. The classic Scapa tour, which is sort of a typical distillery tour. Of course, during COVID and coronavirus times, these tours aren't running just now, but when everything goes back to normal, they will be available and they're a must-do, as you say. So the Scapa tour, a classic distillery tour, going through the distillery, learning all about the process that makes Scapa unique, as well as a tasting of two of our core range whiskies at the end of it as well. So there's a classic tour. Then you have the Lowman tour as well, which is a little step up, offering a wider tasting experience, and also the chance for you to pull a dram of Scapa from the cask as well, which I always feel is a pretty unique experience, especially when you're at the distillery itself. There's something unique about being there in that setting and tasting that particular whiskey. And on top of that, we have the McFarlane and Townsend tour, which is, of course, named after our founders, which again just offers a wider tasting experience, more whiskies to try from the Scapa Distillery, and particularly access to our limited edition whiskies as well. So there's a few tour options on the go. Scapa Distillery has only very recently opened up a distillery visitor centre in the last few years or so, but still a wide range of options if you're on Orkney and plan to visit.
I figure when I'm going to get to Orkney, I'm going to have to stay on the island, right? So probably won't have to walk too far after doing that warehouse tasting. So that's definitely an option. Yeah,
maybe a good thing that, for sure.
But talking about tasting whiskies, one of the whiskies that I find myself constantly, recommending to people is the Ballantine 17, because I think, it can, match up to any of the single malts that we have out there. But I believe that Scapa is one of the malts in the Ballantine 17 blend, and Ballantines has a very long relationship as well. Could you just tell us a little bit about that connection?
Yeah, of course. It's something I always take a particular interest in history, and especially Scotch whisky history. So that sort of period in the late 19th century is really an interesting point in time. Scapa, of course, established in 1885, and from 1898 onwards, we have written records which actually shows that George Ballantyne's and Sons were purchasing Scapa whisky. So as far back as 1898, so purchasing Scapa whisky for their blends. And as you say, that is very much a tradition that we keep up today, with Scapa being one of the key single malts that goes into the much loved Ballantine 17, as you say. And Ballantine 17, really an exceptional complex whisky that really, like you say, holds its own and is particularly popular amongst connoisseurs. So yes, Scapa, very, very important for Ballantines, and has been for, centuries now.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. But again, we're talking about that unpeated style when you're talking about the Skiren. But I've been nosing the Glanza, and this doesn't seem too unpeated, does it? So this is quite a different finish. Could you just tell us a little more about this unpeated house style of Scapa and the range, please?
Yeah, of course, of course. So Scapa Distillery, of course, producing an unpeated spirit. There is, unlike most island distilleries, we don't use peat to dry our malted barley at all when it comes to making Scapa single malt. One thing that's perhaps worth noting as well with the Scapa Distillery is that we actually have a Loman still that we use for our distillation process. And I believe we're the last remaining distillery to use one of these. It's had its rectifying plates taken out, so it doesn't quite operate as a traditional Loman still would, but it allows for lots of reflux and therefore a more delicate, gentle spirit. The Scapa spirit, known for being floral and citrusy in its style, but yeah, as you say, no peated smoky notes with that one. So that would be, of course, the house style of the spirit. But then when you fill it into casks, that's when the real magic happens, of course. So with Scapa Skiren that I have here, Scapa Skiren is a non-age statement whiskey, which has been matured in first fill American oak casks. So you're going to get all those lovely sweet notes of vanilla, butterscotch, and honey all coming through. One of my favourite single malts that's out there, to be honest, a really special whiskey. But also the other core whiskey within our range you have sitting with you there is the Scapa Glanza. So the Glanza has been finished in ex-peated casks. So essentially casks that have previously held peated whiskey. So it's been matured in first fill American oak before being filled into those ex-peated casks, which will just give it a delicate layer of smoke on there. So like you say, you're getting all those rich, those honey type butterscotch notes, and just layered with a subtle smokiness. So it provides a nice balance as well. I should say as well with the name Scapa, and also Skiren and Glanza, these are all words from the Norse language, or Old Norse, which was the traditional Viking language. So, paying tribute to the Viking roots of Orkney. Scapa translating to boat, Skiren translating to bright skies, and then Glanza translating to storm-laden skies. So there's some Norse and Viking heritage in there as well. But slightly contrasting styles of whiskey, but both really exceptional and really hold their own.
I think I have a small sample of Skiren lying about somewhere. I just need to get it out later and do a comparison as well. I couldn't find it in time for our video. But I remember I was watching this little video the other day, and you're talking about the Norse heritage as well. That I don't know how far this is true. There's a lot of legend, right? But I believe that the island of Orkney was gifted by a Norse king to a Scottish king when the Scottish king got married to the daughter of the Norse king. So I find this absolutely fascinating because, we don't really think of Scotland as having like a Viking heritage and all that, especially for us sitting here in India. So it's absolutely fascinating. And that's one of the reasons I definitely, want to go and see what this whole connection is and visit the land. I'm sure there is some, like old historic sites and stuff that will be interesting as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Like you say, the Viking heritage of it makes it particularly unique. You would never think that Scotland has such a rich Viking heritage, dating back over 1,000 years now. And as you say, there is loads of historical sites to visit on Orkney as well. I believe that it is where some of the first settlers on the British Isles settled was Orkney, a long, long time ago. And just the dramatic scenery of Orkney, the rugged shores and the somewhat experiential weather, the stormy weather that it's known for, but also its beauty just makes it a really special place.
Mhm. I look forward to visiting and coming back with some great stories. But thank you, as always, Jordan, for sharing some of these stories with us. It's always such a pleasure speaking with you. But guys, if you want to get in touch with Jordan, I'll put his details down in the description below, as well as a couple of links to the Scapa Instagram and YouTube, as well as maltwhiskydistilleries.com. What I will also do is link to the video with Jordan from 6 months ago talking about the Glenlivet. It was really, really a fun episode talking about one of possibly the most highest selling single malt in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's right up there.
So I'm looking forward to seeing you on another episode soon, Jordan. But for now, do you have any parting words for us?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Uday. It's a pleasure as always. I hope that I've provided a lovely insight to the Scapa single malt and some of the fantastic whiskies that we offer from the Scapa range. But yeah, as always, thanks very much for having me. A real pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Cheers again.
Cheers, Uday. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. So guys, that was quite a conversation talking about, Scotch whiskey to Nordic heritage. That was so much fun. But until next time, please like, subscribe and hit the little bell so you'll know every time we have a new video on here. Until next time, guys, cheers.